Welcome back, Airgun Geeks listeners. We have another killer episode. This episode is absolutely fortuitous in that the way it happened was so organic. And I think it actually kind of caught Patrick off guard, where he just was expecting to have had a phone call with me, and it ended up turning into a whole lot of stuff that neither one of us expected to happen. But to kind of capture the beginning part of this story, Patrick was on the phone with me while working with what's your young fellow's name? Troy Hammer?
Uh, Troy Hammer.
Troy the Hammer, who does
Hmm.
have the finest beard in all of airgunning.
I will agree.
That's how he introduced. I met him at the show in the Midwest, and I said, "Man, that is a fine beard you've got there, young man." And he says, "It's the finest beard in the airgun world." And he stroked it and absolutely he owned it. And so I give him that title. He does have the nicest beard in the airgun world. But anyway, Troy was like, Pat was geeking out on some lathe work, and he's like, "Oh my God, I
Hmm.
got to get me one of these lathes. This is the coolest thing ever. And I could make anything if I had a lathe." Which, by the way, the lathe is the foundation tool of metalworking. It was the first mechanized tool for cutting metal, and everything is derived from the lathe. The milling machine is just a lathe turned upside down, and spindle goes this way, and they're all related to the lathe somehow. So the lathe ended up. Troy was telling us that a certain air gunner, a veteran in the moderator slash shroud arena, had a lathe for sale. It was a spare that he picked up years ago and never really utilized it. And he's now getting to a point in his life where he's kind of semi-retired. He's still making shrouds and silencers for air guns, but he's at a point where he's a little more choosy of what jobs he takes. I want to point out that I did get an email from this individual after we had recorded. He's like, what I said kind of came off that I wasn't interested in doing new work for new customers. And he goes, that's totally not what I wanted to say. This gentleman is still open to working with new customers. He just there are jobs that he will not take, and there are jobs that he will take. And what he wanted to clarify was that he does this now as a hobby, and if it makes him happy, he does it. Um,
Hmm.
he just is recovered from some very invasive cardiac surgery. This wasn't the new school open heart surgery or heart surgery where they go in with a catheter. He actually had the full open chest work done.
Wow.
So that recovery takes a while. And honestly, I was a huge pain in his butt trying to get this lathe deal done. Um, it belongs to Patrick and I, and I'll throw some clips up here in the video side of this to kind of show people what Pat's new lathe looks like. But it's going to stay here in California until Pat gets set up down in Florida, and then we'll probably move it down there. But anyway, Pat, you actually had an interaction with this gentleman way before I did.
Hmm.
At your very first air gun that you bought in your adult life. So you get to introduce who this special guest was.
Wow. So 14 years ago, I was like, I want to get into air gunning. So I started researching like we all do. And I ended up finding, and I think it was the Airgun classifieds or the yellow sheets or yellow pages.
Yellow page, yeah.
Yeah. And I found a Brocock Concept 6. And I'm like, ooh. But then I shot it. I'm like, holy moly, this thing's loud. We've all
Mm.
said that. So digging around, digging around, digging around, trying to figure out how to make this thing quieter. I find this guy named Neil Clague.
The
And I'm
Neil
like,
Clague.
well, now I know him as the Neil Clague, but I just knew him as Neil Clague. And I'm like, okay. So called them up and we had a nice little conversation. And suppressors back then were interesting as far as where the law thought it was at. This is a little before Donnie's time. And he's like, hey, yeah, I'll make it for you, blah, blah, blah. It's for airgun use only and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, okay. When I got that package, I heard angels. I opened that thing up and it was just like, oh, it was a piece of art. You could tell that he put his love and tears and blood and all of that into it. And it was a piece of him. And that
They're
was
literally handcrafted. Every one of them.
Literally every piece of this he made. It was one of the quietest suppressors I've had so far. Donnie's does really good. I don't know what Neil does, but it took this very barky Concept 6 and it was mouse fart quiet. Nice. And that's how it started. And he was like the pinnacle of LDCs, moderators, suppressors, and I'm like, So fast forward 14 years later, talking with Troy leads to me talking to Bill, leads to
who by the way, wasn't pleased with the fact that Troy hadn't contacted said Neil Clague yet, and took matters into his own hands and reached out to Neil myself, because Neil has a website. Just type in Neil Clague in your Google box and you can't miss him. And I reached out to him, and it says if you're going to call him, make sure you call him after 8 p.m. because then he's not in the shop anymore. He's in the house. So I waited. I watched my clock. My phone says, it's 8 p.m. and I called Neil, and actually I got his voicemail. I didn't know the poor guy had just had this surgery done, so I gave him a very wide berth in getting ready to sell us this lathe. But I had the opportunity while I was there, deep in the Sonoma wine country in California, to spend about 30-40 minutes with Neil and ask him questions that I had about his involvement in the airgun world. And I also had a bunch of questions from Patrick. And I loved where these questions took that conversation. So I think, Pat, we can go ahead and roll into that footage right now, if you like, and let our listeners listen and let our viewers view.
Okay, sounds like a plan.
Let's go. And we both got audio, so we're good to go. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay.
So hit me with your questions.
All right. Welcome, Airgun Geeks fans. We have a very rare opportunity here. I am sitting in the legendary home of the legendary silencer manufacturer, Neil Clague, and it's kind of an interesting story that brought the two of us together. It all surrounds an old lathe, and given that lathe a new life in other hands of other air gunners. Patrick and I have bought this lathe under the Airgun Geeks name, and hope to do some custom parts that we have dreamed up for some air guns. And Neil was kind enough to give us a really good deal on it and talk us through the process. And I had the rare opportunity to interview Neil here on camera for our podcast and for the Target Forge YouTube channel. So I am honored to have this opportunity to sit here with Neil. And Neil, if you would just kind of give us a real 20,000 foot of Neil and how you ended up in this airgun world, because you're a legend.
Yeah, I was here looking after my father-in-law with my wife. We moved up from Geyserville. I had an auto body shop, and her father this home burned down, and we had to rebuild it, move up here and look after him. He took a fall and ended up needing full-time care. So we moved up here, look after him, shut my shop down, and I got bored, and I couldn't just be housebound all the time, so I got back into shooting air rifles. That's one of my hobbies when I was a teenager. So I started...
In England? Were you still
in England? Okay. I was in England,
Yeah.
England, yeah. And of course they were low-powered guns in. They were all springers. We didn't have PCP guns. So I bought a PCP gun. I wanted to venture out into something a bit more powerful, and it was pretty loud. I didn't want to disturb my father-in-law and the neighbors, so I bought a silencer online. I'm not going to say who it's from, but it's from one of the original makers back in 2010, 2011. And it wasn't very effective, and it was pretty expensive, so I thought, with my technical background and in design and technology, I thought I could make something a bit quieter than this, so I did. I made myself a couple of silencers and gave some to a few friends, and they lent them to their friends, and slowly they just kind of spread around, and before I knew it, I was making more than I could handle, and got told by my accountant, you can't do this as a hobby anymore. So it ended up turning into a business, which I didn't want to do, but I went from making, maybe 3 a month to 15, 20 a week. I just couldn't, I actually got approached by Brocock. They wanted me to guarantee them $2,000 a year and replace their, who they got now on their, yeah. But they wanted to, they were cheapskates, to be honest with you. They wanted to pay me $40 each.
Yeah.
And I said, no. They said, well, we'll give you 2,000. Or I said, no, I'm not going to be able to do anything for my customers. I said, I'm going to be working flat out to meet your order, and I'm not going to be able to make anything for my customers. I don't want to do that, so I declined.
And I think, in defense of your decision, which doesn't need defending at all, if you're looking for that kind of a price point, you really need to be looking at a CNC solution that doesn't have human hands on it all the time.
Even CNC, you're going to be paying to have them machined. You can't. I don't say you can make them for $40.
But they can usually, volume-wise, they usually make up the delta, right?
It'd be an empty tube.
Yeah.
Empty tube with 2 end caps for $40. That's about all you get.
Yeah.
I get people ask me all the time, can't you give me like a 50% break on this price? I said, no. I said, I'm basically earning what the burger flippers are making at Burger King, and I'm not making a lot of money doing this, but I do it for the fun of it. People don't realize how time consuming they are to make these. I had one thread I couldn't make for a silencer. It was an odd thread. It was one of the 30 caliber, the new, is it Beeman? And it was a 1 16th thread or something strange. And so I had the thread cut by a local engineering shop, and they charged me $130 just to cut the thread.
Oh my God.
So I ended up losing on that suppressor, so I charged $140 for the suppressor, and it's $136 just to cut the threads for me.
Oh my God.
So, when people, they just don't realize what it costs to have machining done. If I'm lucky, I make $20 an hour.
Yeah, I agree. So that kept you in the boutique side of the airgun industry, which is where I've been since I came to the airgun industry. How do you handle customer relations and stuff like that? Is it pretty much an email comes in and they say, I want this, this, and this, and you give a price, or how does that work?
A lot of them are the repeat customers. Nearly all of my business is repeat customers. I've been doing these since 2011 now, so I do have a lot of customers that come back. I got customers that bought from me in 2011, bought a new gun, and they come straight back to me for a suppressor for it. So I'd say good 60-70% is repeat business. But those customers that aren't usually see people chatting about me on one of the forums and realize that I make a fairly good product, so they send me an email and they want to know what it's going to cost. And most of the time they're very, okay, that's great, no problem, I'll send you the money, mail you the money, whatever. Once in a while I get someone that wants to barter about the price. I don't do that. The price is fixed. Occasionally, if someone's a vet serving in one of the forces, a vet, police officer, anyone like that, I'll give them a discount on the price just because I'm ex-Army, come from an Army family, and I appreciate what servicemen give up.
Oh, yeah.
So I give them a discount.
What they're willing to give up, right? I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
exactly.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, most of my customers, they see me on forums, chat. Not me personally, but people talking about me. So I get a lot of inquiries like that.
So it's your business interest is not only limited to just silencers, but you also do some shroud work as well?
Oh, I do a lot of custom shrouds, yeah. One-piece shrouds, two-piece shrouds. Two pieces where you have a shroud that covers the barrel, and then you have a screw-on suppressor on the end of it. So I have a working shroud, so you can shoot the gun with a shroud on its own, so it's not extra long, or if you're in an area where you have to be super quiet, you can screw the suppressor on it. These are usually made out of carbon fiber because I can get bigger diversity of diameters in carbon fiber. You know, they go by 1 millimeter size, 28, 29, you know. It's,
on the inside and the outside, which blew my mind when I started looking at it. I'm like,
exactly.
there is a lot. The world is
with
oyster.
with aluminium, you're kind of stuck, or aluminum, as you Americans say, you're stuck with the diameter that your supplier will give you.
Right.
I'm really limited on the aluminium size, but carbon fiber, it's very light, it's very durable, and it's not really. I do it about the same price as I do for aluminum because there's less machining. You know, I just have to cut it to size and
the finishing, right?
Put the ends on, and well,
if you don't bark it up, it finishes up pretty nice.
Well, I usually take the gloss finish off. I don't like the gloss finish unless the customer stresses they want. If I can't get it in matte, I'll take the gloss finish off and then put a wax or something on it just to seal it. But I don't like the gloss. It's too blingy for my liking anyway. I'm old school.
You like that subdued look.
Yeah.
I saw your El Camino out in the garage. And, yeah, you definitely go for that played down finish. I'm joking. For those that don't know.
I'm biting my lip.
I just helped Neil move an old car that his brother abandoned and dropped in his lap, and that was our first project to get the lathe out, was to get the car out.
Okay. That's been a bugbear in my life for 15 years.
I'm just giving him the Mickey, you know.
And my wife's been giving me hell for that for 15 years. Get that thing out of there. Charge him for rental space.
So really, you know, this has been fortuitous in that the Airgun Geeks have actually helped Neil's marital bliss.
Oh yeah, big time.
She came up and got the damn car out of the garage.
Yeah, she might even talk to me today now.
No kidding. Well, I was a total oof and spilled a whole glass of orange juice over half of her house. So she's run off and isn't talking to me anymore. I'm kidding. She was quite gracious and
she's wonderful like
let
that.
me off the hook, but I felt like an oof. I was just trying to get the camera set up and had stuff falling all over the place. So Neil, I remember you mentioned to me during one of our early conversations that you actually didn't come to this necessarily from a machining standpoint.
No, I didn't. No.
You studied art and design first.
Yeah.
And I think that may have a lot to do with why your product looks so damn nice.
I actually used to design furniture.
Wow.
Yeah, I designed furniture for a company that was going bankrupt. And
It's always fun to work for those.
yeah, well, the guy was a real doofus. I mean, he ran 4 or 5 businesses and every one of them went bankrupt. And this one was on the verge. So I took his furniture and I cut it into pieces so that instead of having a fully skilled upholsterer being required to make it, you could train youngsters to do arms, seats, backs, and then screw them together. So I went in and worked with a local frame maker and told them how to make the frame so that this would all bolt together. And then I prototyped it and brought youngsters in and taught them how to do all the individual components. And next thing I knew, the guy got rid of me, promising he wouldn't, of course. Yeah, he said, well, no hard feelings, it's just a business decision. You know, you earn a lot of money and they're getting 30, 40 pounds a week. It makes more sense for me to pay them and get rid of you. But he became a multi-millionaire and he had stores all over England when I left the UK. But there you go. There's how honest some people are. Promise never to get rid of you, and as soon as you make the money, it's not even a little bonus in the final paycheck. Just see ya.
Yeah. Unfortunately, my experience with most people in the upper levels of management is that the only way to tell if they're lying is their lips are moving. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you came from a furniture world. You ended up making some silencers for you and some friends, and they caught on, and that's how the Neil Clague legend got started.
Pretty much. If you call it a legend, I think I'm well known. I don't like to refer to myself as a legend.
Well, I know. When I read a lot of Airgun One ads or Airgun Sell ads on online forums and stuff, they don't just say, "Yeah, it's got a shroud and a silencer on it." No, they say it's got a Neil Clague silencer.
I have actually had people ask me to sign them for them. I've obliged. I said, "What are you going to do? Why do you want it signed?" "I'm going to put it in a box because you're not going to be making these for all that many years now, and I think it's going to be worth money." I just laugh. I say, "Yeah, I think it's funny."
My ex-father-in-law was a avid circle track race guy, and he had an old street stock car that he had restored. They pulled out of a farm in Connecticut. It was rotten, and he did the full restoration on it. It was beautiful. It was period correct. Everything, barn hinges hand welded on there with coat hanger. It was rough, but it looked like a car would have looked back then. And he looks up one day at a car show, and there is Richard Petty standing there, and he's like, "Yeah, this is when racing was racing." And my father-in-law did not miss a beat. He goes, "Would you sign my car?" And he handed him the Sharpie. And Richard Petty signed the hood of his car. And then my father-in-law brought that car home and had his son clear coat over
I was going to say, we're not going to paint this area.
Oh, no, he clear coated right over it so that it would be there forever. As far as I know, he still has that car.
That's cool.
Still has that signature. But yeah, I get it. I understand.
Well, I did tell the guy, I said, no matter what happens, it'll be worth $100.
Yeah, come hell or high water, it's still got a price tag on it. Well, that's amazing, Neil. So tell us about where your business is now and where you think where it's going to go in the future. I know
it's really not going anywhere. I'm kind of retired now.
Retirement, okay.
I'm semi-retired. I'm not advertising now. I'm just trying to do silencers and custom shrouds for repeat customers, people I've done business with before. Some people I got to work in relationship with, I'm happy to do things for them. I do them at reasonable prices now because I am retired, and I'm getting a little bit of subsidization from the American government now. Not much.
Very
Not
good.
much,
Yeah,
but it's a little bit. So that enables me to give better prices. So I've eaten a lot of the recent increase in the cost of aluminium. It more than doubled overnight because of the cost of gas. It's ridiculous, the price now. So I've kept my prices where they were before pretty much. They haven't gone up. So I'm just not into trying to find more work.
Right.
I want to enjoy. I had, as you know, recent heart surgery, and I want to enjoy my retirement. I don't want to stress myself. So I'm going to continue making them. People want them made, contact me and I'll make them for you, but I'm not going to be in any hurry to finish them. If it takes a week or 2 weeks, you just have to bear with me and wait for it.
Right. And I think you alluded before that you were kind of cherry picking those projects that you want to do.
Exactly.
You're like, I know that's an easy job because I got the tooling for it already, and there's not a lot of development.
Some of the big shrouds really are stressful for me to make. The big Texans, they take a lot of work for me. It takes about 6 hours for me to make a Texan shroud. And then after I've done that, I've got to finish the outside and powder coat it. So it's a lot of work, and it's the big shrouds are stressful. The guns with the carbon fiber shrouds, they're fairly easy. They're not stressful at all. I can put those together fairly quickly. The small suppressors, I can make those fairly quickly now. I mean, a couple of hours. So I can make one in a day and then take the rest of the day off and relax. You know,
It's not like you're new at it.
No, hardly.
Well, I think we better get to some of Patrick's questions
Yeah, okay.
because he will not let me live it down.
I don't remember Patrick, but
Well, that's okay.
I'm sure if
That's okay.
we get into this, I might recognize some of the questions for some reason.
Well, we'll make sure we send you a link to this video
Yeah, that's
and,
good.
And to the podcast too, so that you can check it out on there.
Yeah, okay.
So I think we covered Patrick's first question, which was what was the reason you started making suppressors, and we know that now. We know when you started. We know your career before you started making them. What was your favorite thing to make in these years that you've been doing this? What was the one product you're like, yeah, that kind of gives me the fizz. I like making those.
I think it was the two-piece carbon fiber shrouds, the custom ones. I really enjoy making those. I made some for, I don't know if you know, probably the name Tofaz. Tofaz for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Edric, was it Cedric Sophus?
Yeah.
Yeah. Made one for him, and then there's Jim Walton. These guys are all into the shooting critters and stuff and training people, and Cedric he knew about me for years because I was on the Yellow Forum, and he'd seen my name everywhere, and finally he said, I have you make something for me. And then when I did, he's like, wow, why did I wait so long?
So what about the carbon fiber makes it intriguing for you as a product? Is it the technical side of the carbon fiber? Is it the visual side? Is it both?
You have to be very accurate with carbon fiber, and the machining, because carbon fiber, you can't do anything to the exterior, so you have to machine the components to as close to the OD of the carbon fiber as possible. With the aluminium, I put the end caps on and then machine the whole piece as one.
Right.
But with the carbon fiber, you have to be very accurate with the internal diameter of the end cap when it slides in, and then you have to be very accurate with the outside diameter of it, so that when you put it on there, it's flush with the carbon fiber. So I get a kick out of the, working on the machine and getting these very precise. And then when you finish them and put them together, they just look so nice.
Yeah.
They do. They look really nice. And when they work, when the customer puts them on the gun and says, "Boy, all I can hear is the hammer click," it just makes my day.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Especially on a 30 caliber, when they, shoot a 30 caliber and they say, "Boy, this thing is so quiet." That's kind of nice.
So Patrick asks, he knows you're an avid air gunner. What is your number one air gun? What is the one air gun that will be in that safe until the very end?
I've sold all of my high-end air rifles. If I went back to getting one again, it would be an Air Arms S500 or S510. I really love those guns. I thought all of the hype about them. I heard people, I can shoot the head off a match at 20 yards. I thought that's all bullshit. So I set up 5 matches out back here, and at about 20 yards, I took the heads off all 5, one shot each. And I thought, wow, this gun is the gun I would want to keep. Thinking something's bullshit, and then you go out there and prove it's not. And they're so well, I think they're so well made, and the price for them is pretty reasonable compared to certain other guns on the market now. But all of my guns have been sitting. They don't get used because I was so busy with my work. I just didn't. I had to have time to go out back, fire a couple of pellets and make sure the suppressor's not clipping before I shipped it. And that's about all the time I had.
Right.
I didn't have time to go out and plink it to my heart's content. Now I'm retired, I can spend more time out there. I've gone back to an old Springer. I got a British BSA Lightning.
Oh, wow.
I had one of those when I was in the UK, and I really loved it. And I thought, I'm going to get me one of these. So if I do get rid of all my PCP guns, that's one gun I'm not going to get rid of. So I will keep that VSA Lightning.
It's so funny that your kind of anchor gun is a Springer, because the first legitimate air gun that I ever owned, I never considered any of my Crossmans to really be legitimate. They were basically toys that shot stuff. But when I was in my early 20s, my mother had actually bought this for me as a Christmas present. It was an RWS Model 52 with the T01 trigger.
They're nice, 52.
And I'll tell you what, man, that gun still is the best shooting Springer I own.
I had a 48 and a 52, but I got rid. One of my faults is I get guns, and then people offer to buy them from me, and I let them go. I'm soft. It's like, you'll probably use it more than me, so I let them go. And they're the two. I had a 52 and a 48, and I regret getting rid of both of them. One I did want to get, and I've never really got hold of, is the 54. The one with the recoil thing.
We call that the something king.
Something sledge.
It always intrigued me. But then when I covered the Nationals when it was down in Morro Bay, California, and I watched a guy come completely unhinged because he spent a ton of money to go out to the Nationals. And when he got out there, it could have been self-induced. I don't know. I don't blame it on the gun necessarily, but he was freaking out because he could not get that gun to shoot well at all. And it shot when he left Connecticut.
Really?
But it did not shoot when he got out here, and I don't know what happened to it. Obviously, there was something either wrong with the shooter or the gun.
Or both.
Or both. It could have been. But he came unhinged about that, and he was so devastated. I'm like, I understand. You come out here for an event at that level, and your hardware lets you down.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would go to an event like that without bringing, because I have
more than one.
In Field Target, I have two guns prepped and ready to go. One's a Springer. It's actually a Ryrau 97, totally custom stock from Poland. I would bring both guns just in case something happened. I mean, if my FX gun that I shoot Field Target with has never let me down, knock on wood. The Ryrau is obviously more challenging to shoot because it is a Springer. But I've kind of left the power level down in the dirt because you just have to deal with more recoil. I mean, that's the penalty you pay. And I tried to go the route of tuning a titanium piston in that gun, and it was actually going very well. I had built a dynamometer to measure the reaction forces very accurately in a Springer, and I could even measure lock time on a Springer. So I could detect with a piezo sensor on the trigger housing, I could detect when the shear broke, and I could see the pellet leave the barrel. So I could very, very accurately time that event. And I could also measure the recoil in both directions, both axes on the dynamometer. So what I was able to prove with that equipment was that the titanium piston was remarkable in that it was so much lighter and it just flew faster in the tube. But Paul Short in England I'm sure is an amazing machinist. But what I found in that titanium, and you'll probably key right in on this, in the inside bore of the cylinder, he had cut bands, plastic bands to glides for it to ride on through the bore. And when he made those cuts, it was after the inside bore had been cut. And that material just pushed in just a little bit on the inside of that bore. And just as that piston was getting about 2/3 of the way down its travel, the lip of the seal would hit that little bump in the material. It was just enough to give it a little bit of velocity and stability, which made it lose the accuracy test against
It doesn't take much.
against my RWS. You can't have anything in that cylinder. It's got to be dead smooth. And And I tried to talk to Paul. I tried to get him to take a look at it, at least take a look, because I can feel it with my finger. If I can,
If you can feel it,
if I
it's
can
bad.
feel it with my finger, there's an issue here.
Yeah.
And
I can feel a thousandth
he
with
would
my
not
finger.
accept
I mean,
that he let anything bad out of his shop, and I'm like, well, I guess I'm just out $350 because I shipped it back to him. He asked me to ship it back, and I did. Height of the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
God knows whatever happened to it, but I never heard back from him. So I was like, well,
maybe he's working on making you another one. If it's taken him that long, I would hope so.
I don't know. It only took 2 weeks to get the first one, so I don't know. I kind of wrote it off, and I put the German parts back in. But as beautiful as that gun is, and it is gorgeous. If I had to take a Springer to a field target match, I'd probably grab that old RWS. But just like you, it's my anchor gun. It's my anchor gun to my youth, and it's just hysterical that we.
I did have an HW97 when I was in Scotland. My father bought it for me. He was on death's doorstep. I know he had cancer, and I was there looking after him. And because I was getting bored in order to do it myself, because he slept most of the time, he bought me this HW97. I go out in the garage over there and shoot with it, and I was just amazed how accurate that gun was. And when I came over to the USA, I sold that. It had never been shot other than myself in Scotland for probably 100, 200 pellets, just one tin. And the guy told me it was totally dry inside. So they must have sold that thing with no lubrication, nothing. It was just totally dry inside that gun. I said, well, I'm amazed, because that thing it was a hammer. I mean, it would just put pellet on top of pellet.
Wow.
So it must be a pretty good gun if it will shoot like that dry. Lube it up and tune it, I would imagine, be an excellent gun.
And honestly, the Germans typically don't have a process error that would have allowed that to go out dry. They might have had a self-lubricating piston in that gun that actually took care of itself. I don't know. I'm giving them more credit than they probably deserve, but
yeah, usually the springs and stuff are greased on those, aren't they?
Yeah.
Everything was just totally dry.
yeah, wow.
You'd think you'd get twang from the spring with no grease on it.
Yeah, and you'd figure in Scotland it would be growing hair by the time it came over here. All right, well, let's get back to Patrick's questions again and see where he's going. He wanted to know how long you've been in the U.S.
33 years.
33 years. And what area of England did you come from?
I didn't really come from England. I moved over here from Scotland. I lived on the southwest coast of Scotland for 3 years. I moved up there to look after my parents. They were both.
But that is not a Scottish accent.
No, it's not. I come from an army family. I was actually born in Hong Kong.
Oh.
My father was in the REME, in British Army. For those that don't know, it's Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers. And he was stationed in Hong Kong. I was born over there, and they moved back to the UK when I was a baby, still 1 year old. So I have no recollection of it, and I always wanted to go back and see it, place of my birth, but now it's gone back to the commies. I'm not allowed to because I'm ex-army, and we're not allowed to visit communist countries. So I can't go back to Hong Kong and see it. Not that I'd want to now with the communists in charge of it, it might be.
Was your service in the U.S. Army or the British Army?
No, British Army.
Okay.
With the Royal Anglian Regiment, I was infantry. And all over the UK, Wiltshire, Essex, Norfolk. It just moved around all over the place. 6 years here and 5 years there. And I went to school in Essex. My children still live in Essex. I say children, they're all middle-aged now. It's hard to think that my kids are all in their 40s and 50s now.
Oh, I know. It's a rough pill to swallow.
Yeah, it is. I think that's answered that question, hasn't it? All over, really. All over.
That was actually, that was one of the better questions as far as coming up with a really killer twist. And by the way, on behalf of all of the Airgun Geeks listeners and the Target Forge fans, thank you for your service. Doesn't matter what.
Yeah, I'm the same. It doesn't matter if you served, you served.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's why I give discounts to American servicemen, because I appreciate what they give up to serve.
Yeah, Patrick writes in here, this is not a question, but Patrick's first airgun that he ever owned, the owner of this podcast, was a Brocock G6 22, and you made the suppressor on that gun.
I remember the Brocock. Yeah, it was a great little gun.
Yep.
And I sold a couple of Brococks with one of my suppressors on, so I don't know whether I made one for him or maybe he bought one of my Brococks. I know one of my customers bought one of my Brococks, and he sold it, and then he bought another one that had a Hugget on there. And his Hugget cost him, I think, $260 for that.
Wow.
So he had me make him a suppressor for it. I charged him $100 for the suppressor, and he sold the Hugget and kept mine. I think that tells you something.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does.
But he regretted selling the Brocock. I sold him, and then he bought another one with the Hugget. Bought the, one after the other. He bought the Hugget specifically for that Brocock. But yeah, it's funny. I mean, I don't see much difference between my product and anyone else's, really. I know they're light and they're fairly quiet, but I mean, there are other quiet makers out there. I'm not going to detract from them. There are some good makers out there.
Excellent. Well, Neil, I want to thank you for your time today.
No problem.
I know I've tied up a better part of your day today.
I got nothing better to do. I'm retired now. I got my day's work done. I got that beast out of the garage thanks to you. My wife thanks you. I thank you.
I've got to get Patrick's lathe back to my shop, and I might cut some metal on it before he gets it. We'll see how that goes. It's been a long time since I've had a lathe in my shop to actually run. I always had one at work, so I used to use that all the time.
Yeah, get some oil on those ways and everything before you use it.
Yeah.
And it has stood literally for years without being used, that lathe, so I might be inclined to just change the oil on it as well. It's been running correctly and the oil was changed, but it hasn't been used for years. So
yeah,
just being the person I am, I'd want to change that oil.
Probably good advice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Neil.
It's nice to meet you.
Appreciate everything. And thank you for helping us get Patrick and I a lathe. So this has
welcome.
It's been a big day for the Airgun Geeks and for Target Forge. So thanks everybody for watching.
A big day for me too.
Huh?
It's been a huge day for me too. My wife will talk to me again. She can put her car in the garage now.
That's excellent. Well, thank you, Neil.
You're welcome.
Wow, Bill, that was something. I'm almost speechless. I mean, for him to take time and then talk about all of that stuff.
Yeah. The Neil Clague origin story itself is priceless. The guy is a hoot to hang out with. I was such an oof. He and his wife fixed me this lovely cup of orange juice, which I was sipping on, and I had it sitting on their table, which, nice, clean kitchen table. We're going to sit down and record, right? So what do? I go to open my my case that I keep my cameras in, and I pop the latch, and of course my hand flies off the latch and knocks the orange juice all over everything. I swear to God, every piece of fabric within a yard of me had orange juice on it. I was like, oh my God, what have I done to this woman's house? So anyway, we get all that sticky mess cleaned up, and then Neil and I sat down and had a lot of fun talking about air guns, and we all went out to lunch afterwards, and it was definitely a really good time. And I'm so happy to be able to have been there and grab that story and got it preserved forever for the airgun world. And do remember that Neil is very open to new customers, old customers, repeat customers, but understand that he has discretion over the work that he's going to take and the time that he's able to get it done. So if you want a genuine Neil Clague suppressor or shroud, do reach out to him and see if he's game. I have a feeling that this repair that they did to his ticker is gonna make him like the $6 million man. I think
Mm.
in a few months he's going to get stronger, faster, better, and he's going to be super Neil Clague. So don't let the gray hair daunt you. Don't write this guy off. I think he's strong as hell. He's an ex-British military guy. Those guys are tough as it gets. So number one, thanks Neil for your service. Anybody who's served in the military or law enforcement or as a first responder gets a lot of respect from me. So thanks Neil for that service. And Pat, I think this episode we're not going to have an update for the Nodos challenge, but we will definitely get around to that in the next one.
Definitely. And I second your motion on first responders and military. Thank you for your service, your dedication, and thank your family also for allowing you to do that line of work. It is very taxing. I totally understand. So again, remember, make sure you check out targetforge.net for all your target needs and any of your GX compressor parts.
Good point.
Always check out the website.
Do go subscribe to the Target Forge YouTube channel and also the Airgun Geeks YouTube channel. Get those subscribes up for Patrick. We gotta pump those numbers, guys. Let's get on it.
All right. And like always, thank you for taking time for listening to Bill and I on the Airgun Geeks podcast. And remember, stay geeky.